Good morning. Ooh, it's working. And welcome to our Sunday worship service. I'm Debbie McLaughlin, and I'll be your celebrant this morning. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all those who are joining us for the first time. We are very glad that you are here. If you've come in person, you should have received a welcome packet with an information card in it. If you fill that out and drop it in the offering basket, we will be in touch to support you in finding your way into our community. If you are joining us online, there's a link on our website to an electronic version of the same card. Our welcoming committee members have yellow name tags and can answer any questions or point you toward additional information. Whether you are new or not, please consider staying for coffee and conversation after the service, either downstairs in our fellowship hall or in our Zoom room. And now let's say our words of welcome together. Whether this is your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, and whether you strolled, rolled, Zoomed, ran, or danced in, we are glad you chose to join us. We are one people of many beliefs, identities, origins, sexualities, and genders. All are welcome here. Now, we will take a moment to say hello across the technical divide. First, we're going to show the people joining us on Zoom. If you are at home, please turn on your camera. Camera's on? Okay, now people at home, wave. Okay? Now people who are attending the service in our building, it's your turn to wave. Okay, we preface our service by acknowledging our church was built on the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu, called Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse, and the Chichuns, called the Coeur d'Alene. Let us pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and for responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. We are hoping that folks joining us via Zoom have a chalice or a candle to light, something to light it with. And so now we're going to light our chalices together. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share. Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. I am the Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Stevens. I have the incredible honor of serving this congregation as its minister. And today, I get to be a history geek. We are celebrating the 455th anniversary of the issuance of the Edict of Torda. Well, actually, we think. I mean, we know it's been 455 years, but the exact date, it turns out, is a little cloudy. I went down a very deep rabbit hole trying to pin that down and utterly failed. So we don't know the exact date it was passed, but sometime around the beginning of the year in 1568. So in any event, the story of the edict is not likely to be one that you have learned before.
even if you happen to take a graduate level class in Reformation Europe. Transylvania, which is where the Edict of Torda was issued, was a tiny vassal nation caught between two superpowers with constantly shifting borders and a very turbulent history. King John Sigismund, who issued the edict, died childless at the age of 31, and his brief reign was characterized by political unrest and multiple assassination attempts. If it weren't for the edict, his reign would be at best a footnote in the story of the struggle between the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburgs. But the Edict of Torda changed the course of history. It planted a seed that grew into a worldwide embrace of freedom of religion and acceptance of religious pluralism. So we're going to actually begin our worship this morning by hearing the words, a little old-fashioned, of the Edict of Torda. It goes like this. In every place, the preachers shall preach and explain the gospel, each according to his understanding of it. And if the congregation like it, well. If not, no one shall compel them, for their souls would not be satisfied, but they shall be permitted to keep a preacher whose teaching they approve. Therefore, none of the superintendents or others shall abuse the preachers. No one shall be reviled for his religion by anyone, according to the previous statutes. And it is not permitted that anyone should threaten anyone else by imprisonment or by removal from his post for his teaching. For faith is the gift of God, and this comes from hearing, which hearing is by the word of God. So setting aside the old-fashioned and gendered language, it's a pretty beautiful statement that arose out of this war-torn nation. Now, our opening hymn this morning, we're going to be very brave, and we're going to try singing in Hungarian. Now, I will teach you how to pronounce the words, and there is an English version, so if the Hungarian is just too much for you, you can follow Sam and sing the English words. But I encourage you to be brave. Okay, so we're going to start by learning the pronunciation. This is number 1043 in the Teal hymnal, and I think you'll also see the words up on the screen. So I'll speak a line, and you speak it back to me, and then we'll start the music. Halhit at zeretet. Halzeretet at beke. Halbeke at aldash. Hal aldash at Isten. Hal Isten at szükség nincsen. What do you think? Can you do this? Well, I'll sing it into the microphone, so if nobody else is singing it, you'll still get to hear how the words go together.
Okay, so let's try singing it one time, and Janet is going to play along with the melody. So if you're interested in trying the Hungarian, listen for the violin, and she'll lead you. So take it away. Just for fun, let's try the English as well. So those of you who have deeper voices like me can sing it down in the basement. Those of you with high voices can sing it an octave higher or wherever you're comfortable. But the words we should all know because it's in English. So let's start right on it. Where does that mean? Okay, so those of you singing this part, you're going to be listening for the accordion. So Dwayne's going to join us on this.
There is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no need. So this is a very common house blessing amongst the Transylvanian Unitarians, who call themselves the Seke. If you look at the title of it, it's Seke Aldash, and Seke means the people of the woodlands, and it's another word for the Transylvanians.
Okay, so here's the game plan.
Okay.
Scott's going to give us 2 measures of guitar introduction, and then everybody comes in on part 1. So
That's the Hungarian.
The Hungarian. So we're all going to sing Hungarian, and we're all going to try.
Just do your best.
And we're going to do that all the way through. And then Scott's going to give us another 2 measures. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. Then the next time, we go back and sing the English part.
All of us sing English.
All of us singing English. And then
Then we get really brave.
Yes. Then we're going to split off, and let's just make a little plan here. Who wants to try the Hungarian on the final verse? Who wants to try the English on the final verse? Great, okay. So for English people on the last verse, listen for me and for Dwayne on the accordion, and then the Hungarian will be Elizabeth and the violin, if that works. Okay.
Let's stand up. Or rise in body and spirit, unless you're not comfortable standing, in which case, please.
So 1, 2 measures of intro, and 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. And now I'd invite the children forward for our time for all ages.
Now, let's take a moment to engage in the practice of generosity together. For those of you able to make a financial contribution, The logistics are on your screen. We'd invite you to either copy down the information you need or simply go to the website to make a donation. The web address is in the chat. Those of you who are newer or visiting from another part of the country may not be aware that we typically give away all of the cash from our Sunday offering to local charities whose missions align with our values, a program called the Month of Sundays. This month, our donations will benefit Sojourners Alliance, whose mission is to confront the barriers that lead to hunger, homelessness, and poverty through direct intervention with those in need by providing a safe and comfortable living environment while receiving intensive case management. If you are donating online, you can choose Month of Sundays from the drop-down menu, and your donation made today, and your donation made today will automatically be credited to the Scholarship Fund. In the spirit of love and for the continuing work of this church, we now take some time to practice generosity together.
That was great, thank you. I forgot an announcement. We have today after church, so I'm gonna slide it in here before we get into the meat of the service and just say that we have a new to UU luncheon and workshop today, starting at 11:45. Downstairs, we'll feed you and I'll teach you a little bit more about Unitarian, get to know each other, teach you a little bit more about Unitarian Universalism and how the church works. So anyone who'd like to join us is more than welcome. Okay, so soon we're going to share joys and sorrows from our personal lives. But first, we're going to take just a moment to light a candle of broader concern. This is formally known as our special candle for peace. And today, let's light it for all those impacted by the shooting at Michigan State. Globally, though, many people's attention may have moved on. They're still digging bodies out of the rubble in Turkey and Syria, and the bombs are still falling in Ukraine. So let's breathe. Breathe in the anger, pain, sorrow. Breathe out love. Breathe out peace. In the face of tragedy and disaster, let us affirm the sacredness of life. In the face of violence, let us recommit to the work of creating peace. And now I invite Krista Kramer, a member of our pastoral care team, forward to lead the lighting of candles of joy and of sorrow. Be here now. Is this on? There we go. Breathe. I invite us into a time of shared silence with these words by Sarah Sutherland Dean. She writes, "Someone called me a bleeding heart liberal. It was not intended as a compliment. However, I will always consider it one of the biggest compliments of my life. My heart bleeds for the underdog. My heart fights for those who can't fight. My heart rejoices in seeing others overcome adversity. My heart desires love and peace for everyone. My heart is compassionate and empathetic. My heart sees pain in others and wants to help. My heart believes in equality. My heart sees the good in people. My heart chooses action over fear." Well, Sarah wrote this piece in the first person singular. She could have used the plural for us as religious liberals. Our hearts bleed for the underdog. Our hearts fight for those who can't fight. Our hearts rejoice in seeing others overcome adversity. Our hearts desire love and peace for everyone. Our hearts are compassionate and empathetic. Our hearts see pain in others and want to help. Our hearts believe in equality. Our hearts see the good in people, and God willing, our hearts choose action over fear. In the silence, may our brave, tender, battered hearts beat together, part of a vast and ancient conspiracy to create a world with justice, mercy, and compassion for all people. Let's rest in the silence together. Amen, and blessed be. Beautiful, thank you. Our reading comes from a piece called "Transphobic and Anti-Abortion Policies Are a Direct Threat to My Religious Freedom" by Unitarian Universalist Association President, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. It was published in Religious Dispatches on June 6, 2022. Religious freedom, as originally articulated by the Edict of Torda, an historic declaration of religious freedom and pluralism from which UUs draw our religious lineage, more than 450 years ago served as a protection for minority religious views. And those safeguards are certainly why the Founding Fathers included freedom of religion in the First Amendment. But currently, the concept of religious freedom is being misused, especially by those on the right, as an excuse for already powerful and privileged religious movements to exclude, oppress, and circumvent the civil and human rights of people with marginalized identities. It is immoral to permit conservatives to redefine religious liberty to mean something that protects only the powerful. And it is unconstitutional to allow conservative religious beliefs to dictate issues of justice and equity for all religious communities and society. While faith traditions have the right to their own religious teachings within their communities, in the public square, all people deserve to be treated equally. This is fundamental to everyone's religious freedom in a pluralistic society. So I'm going to go just a little bit deeper into the history here. Bear with me. Transylvania was a tiny region of Central Europe bordered by mountains on all four sides: the Carpathians to the north and east, the Transylvanian Alps to the south, and the Apuseni to the west. When I say tiny, I mean tiny. It's only about 2/3 of the size of the state of Maine. And for most of its history, it's been at best a region or a duchy or a vassal state to greater powers. It was under the control of the Dacian kingdom and Roman Dacia until it was overrun by the Goths, who held it until the Huns took it over. Next came the Gepids, the Avar Khaganate, the Slavs, and the Bulgarian Empire. During the late 9th century, it was conquered by the Kingdom of Hungary, and from then until 1848, when it had its one very brief period of independence, which ended in 1867, so less than 20 years later, it basically became a bargaining chip in a power struggle between various iterations of the Austrian Empire and the Turks. Now, King John Sigismund's reign, if we're honest, it's a little iffy to call it that. And it's a little iffy to call him a king. His father, John Zápolya, was a wealthy Hungarian nobleman who spent most of his life battling Ferdinand I, Archduke of Austria, for control of Transylvania. He was elected by his peers. Transylvania was a democracy. So the two leaders signed the Treaty of Varad on 24th of February 1538 and brought an end to the civil war by confirming both kings' rights to retain the lands that they held. John Zápolya, who was childless at the time, also acknowledged Ferdinand's right to take control of Transylvania after his death. But then, his son, John Sigismund, was born on July 4th of 1540. His father heard about it, and the very next day came down very ill and died just a few weeks after his son was born. But on his deathbed, he extracted a promise from his allies that they would refuse to honor the Treaty of Varad, refuse to turn the realm over to Ferdinand, and would instead endeavor to pass these lands and the title along to the newborn baby. I sometimes wonder if this would make a good movie. It's very dramatic. Now, John Sigismund's mother, Isabella, was the daughter of Sigismund the Old, the King of Poland. She and 3 other men were named the guardians of the baby king and ruled the kingdom in his stead. I won't go into the details, but there were many battles, much political intrigue, 5 years spent in exile. It's confusing, probably doesn't matter in the end. Eventually, they wound up striking a deal with the Ottoman Empire, who agreed to keep the Austrians at bay in exchange for Transylvania becoming a vassal state and paying an annual tribute. Isabella died in 1559, and then John Sigismund, at the age of 19, ascended to rule, but he never actually took the title of king. He called himself king-elect. He was still supported by the Turks and by the majority of the Transylvanian Diet, the Democratic Assembly of Nobles. But his short reign was contested all the way through, was characterized by continuing conflict, civil war, peasant uprising, many violent acts. John Sigismund also survived at least 8 known assassination attempts. All of which is to say, we think our politics are ugly, but at least nobody's being impaled. People were being impaled back then. Ugh. So this is the environment in which this young king made an astounding move, issuing the Edict of Torda. Now, he'd had a lifelong interest in religion and spirituality, and even before he ascended to rule, he took his own faith journey seriously. He started as a Catholic and evolved to Lutheranism, then Calvinism, and then to Unitarianism. Part of it was the influence of his mother, thought to be one of the best educated noble women alive at the time. Part of it was his tutor and the family doctor, Unitarian Giorgio Biandrata. But the single most important influence on John Sigismund was Francis David. Now, this is a name you might want to remember. David was born around 1520, so he was 20 years older than Sigismund. He studied in Wittenberg and Frankfurt and was first ordained as a Roman Catholic priest, later became a Lutheran minister, and then a Calvinist bishop in the Principality of Transylvania. So you notice that their religious paths are pretty parallel. He was very familiar with all of the teachings and practices of the Roman Catholic and Protestant churches, and then he came under the influence of Biandrata, was persuaded by his arguments, and became a Unitarian. David is known as the father of Transylvanian Unitarianism. Now, he was brilliant and eloquent, and he won the heart of the young king, who declared himself to also be a Unitarian, following a series of theological debates. Now, back then, these theological debates, which might sound kind of boring to us, were the equivalent of the Super Bowl and the Oscars combined. So it was in the wake of one of these debates, an event that lasted 10 days, that King John Sigismund issued the Edict of Torda. It was an entirely remarkable development. Preeminent historian Earl Morse Wilbur writes, "Whatever may be judged of John Sigismund as a civil ruler, embarrassed as he constantly was by a nation of disunited elements within and by powerful enemies ceaselessly plotting to overthrow him from without, yet in one respect he stands preeminent over the other rulers of his time, for he was throughout his reign a resolute champion of freedom of conscience and of liberty in the choice and exercise of religion, at a time when in other countries the privileged religions were exercising pressure more or less severe to overthrow or exterminate their rivals. No religious persecution was permitted in Transylvania under the rule of John Sigismund. Nay more, at a period when his own religion, through open debate, had won a sweeping popular victory, and when it was espoused by the great majority of the members of his government, no advantage was taken of the opportunity to secure especial privileges for it. In the year when King John issued the Edict of Torda, guaranteeing full religious liberty, Protestant theologians were still praising Calvin for having burned Servetus alive. The Inquisition was shedding Protestant blood in the Netherlands. The massacre of Protestants in France on St. Bartholomew's Eve was still a year and a half in the future. And more than 40 years were still to pass before persons ceased to be burned at the stake in England for holding wrong religious opinions. So, the issuance of the edict marked a turning point. Though progress most certainly wasn't smooth even in Transylvania, John Sigismund was succeeded by Stephen Bathory, a Roman Catholic who strengthened religious laws and imprisoned Francis David. In fact, Unitarians and Transylvanians survived hundreds of years of discrimination and persecution, as well as pretty much continuous political unrest. They've also, embarrassingly, distanced themselves from their own principles by embracing anti-Semitism prior to World War II. And currently, many of our Transylvanian siblings are anti-LGBTQIA and embrace the leadership of Viktor Orban in Hungary. You may not know, but Orban is sort of the Hungarian version of Trump. He's a reactionary populist nationalist who's led his nation a good distance down the path toward fascism. And the Unitarians like him, those who like him, because he supported their desire to be annexed back to Hungary. Transylvania is now mostly in Romania. Still, worldwide, the evolution is clear. Over time, we see these ideas of religious tolerance and freedom of conscience spreading and taking root and becoming just the way things are in civilized society. Religious fanatics who try to convert people at sword point or gunpoint are now the exception rather than the rule and are soundly condemned by the international community. So that's what's happened in the last 455 years. And it's no small thing. It is no small thing, and we should never take it for granted, especially in these times when a vocal and powerful minority are using religious freedom as a cover for hate-filled, discriminatory, harmful choices and acts. As Pete Buttigieg put it after the Supreme Court upheld a Trump administration regulation allowing employers with religious objections to limit their employees' access to birth control, when freedom of religion is invoked as an excuse for discrimination, both freedom and religion are diminished. So, if you haven't guessed by now, I'm kind of a history nerd. I hope I haven't bored you too much. But I find it useful to take a step back every now and then and look at the overarching trends. Like Theodore Parker, what I see is that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it definitely bends toward justice. I also see that it's never bent in a smooth or a straight line. Rather, we see progress occurring in fits and spurts as greater freedom leads to pushback from people with power and privilege. Just like it did in Transylvania, with a revolutionary move toward religious freedom followed almost immediately by a brutal crackdown. I believe that what we are witnessing in this place, in these times, is a period of intense pushback against expanding basic human rights to all people, regardless of race, nationality, sexuality, gender identity or expression, or religion. The attempt to control, discriminate, and shut people out of the structures of power is motivated by greed, though, not faith, and we should be clear about that. Religion, specifically conservative Christianity, has been hijacked, and it's been used to activate people's fear, which makes them easier to manipulate, and it is unconscionable. We can affirm the right to free choice in religious beliefs while still standing firm against the abuse of power in the public square. If a person believes that abortion is a sin, I completely support their right to believe that and their right not to get an abortion. But as Susan Frederick Gray pointed out in our reading, if abortion is made illegal, that tramples not just on the bodily autonomy of people who are pregnant, but on our religious freedom and on our Constitution. If a person's religious freedom leads them to think that marriage should be defined as one man and one woman, well, I think they're wrong, but okay. No one should be forced to marry someone they don't want to. And there has never been and never will be a way to force clergy to officiate at marriages. In fact, as I say no all the time, mostly because of scheduling, but sometimes because I don't know the people involved. And very occasionally because I do know them, and I actually just don't think they're making the right decision. Nobody can make me do it. But if, God forbid, the extremist Supreme Court tries to overturn gay marriage, that's a violation of my religious freedom, because my faith teaches me that love is love. And what are we to do? Well, I think if we follow the lead of our spiritual ancestors, of Francis David and King John Sigismund, what we will do is make a habit of three things. First, we keep exploring, learning, and listening to others while always honoring our own conscience. We see in both of these stories a willingness to evolve, and more than that, they made a commitment to question their own beliefs and understandings. This is why I advocate the somewhat adequate for me for now approach to faith development. When it comes to the great questions of morality, meaning, life, and death, there are no right answers, certainly no final answers, only answers that are somewhat adequate for me for now. Second, We need to trust the power of persuasion rather than yielding to the temptation to indulge in the power of coercion. Discussion, debate, and acceptance of multiple viewpoints are key to the way we engage in the world. The late Forrest Church wrote about parallax vision, the ability to understand that the path to truth looks different depending on where we are standing. The metaphor that he uses to capture this is one of my favorites. If you imagine you're standing on the shore of a mountain lake at night, and the moon is shining, full moon, it looks to you like there's a clear, glorious, golden path that leads straight to the moon. And you look to your right, actually that's my left, but so you look to the left, and there's somebody standing in darkness, and you look to the right, and there's somebody standing in darkness, and you might feel sad for them that they don't have this clear, glorious, golden path straight to the truth. But what we need to remember is that they have their own path, and for them, you are the one standing in darkness. So third, we need to use whatever power and privilege we have, not to serve our own interests, but to protect and advocate for those who are more vulnerable. Collectively, we actually have a lot of power and influence in this community. We have this beautiful, functional building. We have financial resources. We have a lot of personal influence. We do a lot of good work. And we're using all of those things not just to meet our own spiritual needs, but to help others. Whether it's the Rainbow Chalice window or the month of Sunday donations or the fact that we will always, always be a sanctuary and a pipeline for anyone seeking gender-affirming care or access to reproductive health care. Our church exists to be a beacon of kindness, justice, and progressive values here on the Palouse. So today, I just want us to remember that we are also the inheritors of a powerful moral and spiritual legacy. We have the vast majority of public opinion and moral consensus on our side, so those folks with wacky beliefs who are trying to restrict access to medical care and books and trying to challenge people's access to historical facts, they may win short term, but they're ultimately fighting a losing battle. The arc bends toward justice. Because there's something, and why does it bend? It bends because there's something in the human spirit that longs for freedom, for full and authentic expression. And there's something in the human heart that recognizes other human beings as precious, complex, and worthy of respect and care. And then there is some inexplicable and irresistible force in human society that keeps moving us slowly with those frustrating fits and starts, but inexorably toward a world where all people are supported and able to thrive. So may we trust our spirits and our hearts and this process of collective evolution that's gotten us this far. May we trust one another. May we be brave and visionary and compassionate and strong, and may we do our part in this time to embody the legacy of freedom and love that comes to us from the past for the sake of our shared future. So be it, and so may it be. I invite you now to rise and body your spirit. Let's sing together number 103, For All the Saints.
Thy name
Closing reading is a poem by Teresa I. Soto called To the People Who Have Mistaken Freedom for Liberation. To be free, you must embrace the breath of your own existence without apology, even if they try to take it from you. You must know not that you can do whatever you want. You are not a kudzu vine, eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. You must know instead that inside you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding. But to actually be free, you must know and you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. Being free is not a license, but a promise.
Let's sing together Dona Nobis Pacem, our musical benediction. Dona nobis pacem, pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Please say with me the words to extinguish our chalice. Can you put it out, Deb? We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it guide our way as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again. Beloveds, we need to claim proudly this fierce, ancient lineage of freedom and insight and courage and love. So may we be brave, may we stick together, may we embody our values in our personal lives and in the public square, and may we honor those universes inside us and inside others until the day when everyone, no exceptions, is allowed to shine. Go in peace. Come back next Sunday.